Caitlin Clark isn't just a basketball superstar. At this point, calling her that almost feels too small. She's a force of nature, the kind of athlete who turns ordinary arenas into electric stages and routine games into cultural events. Every time she steps onto a court, the energy shifts. Cameras appear. Crowds grow louder. Records begin to tremble. But one quiet November morning, something happened that nobody expected. Instead of walking into a basketball arena, instead of the familiar hardwood floor and roaring fans, Caitlin Clark stepped onto something completely different, a perfectly trimmed stretch of green grass under the Florida sun. A golf course. And suddenly the entire sports world noticed. There she was, the most talked about basketball player on the planet, arriving at Pelican Golf Club outside Tampa. Cameras followed her like she was walking into Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Fans leaned over ropes, whispering and pointing. Golfers paused their routines. The question hung in the air. Could one athlete really command this much attention in two completely different sports? This wasn't just a casual celebrity appearance. It wasn't a quick photo opportunity or a promotional stunt. What unfolded that day hinted at something bigger, something almost unbelievable. Because Caitlin Clark doesn't just enter spaces. She changes them. Before anyone could even process what she was doing on a golf course, a challenge started spreading among fans online. Could you guess where Caitlin Clark surprised the world by showing up during the off-season? Was it a soccer field? A tennis court? A track stadium? Or a golf course? Fans debated endlessly, dropping guesses and theories across social media, convinced there had to be some deeper reason behind it. But before the answer was revealed, one thing needed to be understood. To truly grasp why Caitlin Clark appearing on a golf course felt so surreal, you have to understand what she had already accomplished in basketball. Because without that context, the rest of the story simply doesn't hit the same. Clark grew up in Des Moines, Iowa. Not exactly the epicenter of American sports culture. Not a basketball factory. Not one of those famous pipelines that churns out superstar athletes every year. It was just a city with driveways, local gyms, and a kid who fell in love with the game. From a young age, Caitlin Clark spent hours shooting on outdoor hoops, long after the sun dipped below the houses. While most kids were practicing layups, Clark was experimenting with something different. Deep shots. Very deep shots. She studied highlights of Stephen Curry like a scientist studying film. Every release, every movement, every bit of footwork. Soon her range started stretching farther and farther out. High school defenders quickly realized something terrifying. Guarding Caitlin Clark didn't start at the three-point line. It started almost at half court. By the time she arrived at the University of Iowa, people expected her to be good. What they didn't expect was what happened next. Caitlin Clark didn't just become one of the best players in women's college basketball. She became one of the greatest scorers college basketball had ever seen. Period. Men's or women's. Game after game, season after season, she piled up points at a pace that felt unreal. Her deep threes became viral clips. Her court vision produced highlight assists that made crowds gasp. And her confidence turned every big moment into must-watch television. Then history arrived. Caitlin Clark became the all-time leading scorer in NCAA Division I basketball history. Not just the women's record. The overall record. She passed legends that had held their place in history for decades. She passed names that basketball fans had grown up believing were untouchable. Pete Maravich. Kelsey Plum. Every player who had ever laced up sneakers in college basketball. Gone. Rewritten. Replaced by one name. Caitlin Clark. By her junior and senior seasons, something extraordinary was happening. Women's college basketball wasn't just popular anymore. It was appointment television. The national championship game pulled in nearly 10 million viewers. A year later, the numbers climbed even higher. Some of Clark's games were drawing audiences that rivaled major NBA broadcasts. One major newspaper even gave her a nickname that perfectly captured the moment. The GOAT of TV ratings. Her games didn't just attract basketball fans. They pulled in casual viewers, curious spectators, and people who simply wanted to witness the phenomenon everyone was talking about. Then came the next chapter. The WNBA draft. When the Indiana Fever selected Caitlin Clark with a #1 pick, something remarkable happened almost instantly. The league changed overnight. Her debut game drew millions of viewers. Arenas began selling out across the country. Merchandise sales exploded. Fever jerseys started appearing everywhere from major cities to small towns. The demand became so intense that Indiana had to move several home games to larger NBA arenas just to accommodate the crowds. For a rookie, it was unprecedented. At the end of the season, she was named Rookie of the Year, almost unanimously. One single voter decided not to choose her, a detail that somehow made fans even more passionate in defending her greatness. Everything seemed unstoppable. Until the injuries came. A quad strain, an ankle issue, then a lingering groin injury that refused to fully heal. For the first time in her life, Caitlin Clark wasn't dominating games. She was watching them from the sideline. For a player whose entire identity had been built on competing, the silence must have felt strange. The arenas were still loud, the crowd still massive, but she couldn't step onto the court. The Fever still fought their way into the playoffs behind teammates like Kelsey Mitchell. They even pushed the defending champions to the brink in a dramatic winner-take-all game. But something was missing. Everyone could feel it. Ratings dipped. Crowds shrank slightly. The electricity wasn't quite the same. Because when Caitlin Clark wasn't playing, the league lost a small piece of its spark. So when the off-season arrived, she faced a choice. Disappear quietly and recover. Or find a new arena to compete in. Caitlin Clark chose something nobody expected. Golf. At first, many people assumed it was just a fun hobby. But the truth was more surprising. Clark had been playing seriously for over a year and a half before the public even noticed. She carried a 16 handicap, which in golf terms means she wasn't a beginner casually swinging a club. She was legitimately competitive. Her first major appearance came during the Pro-Am at the John Deere Classic on the PGA Tour. There, she played alongside two-time major champion Zach Johnson, who immediately noticed something about her swing. It wasn't just the mechanics. It was the attitude, the competitiveness. The same intensity that made her dangerous on a basketball court was suddenly appearing on a golf course. Then came another event that sent shockwaves through the golf world. Clark joined the LPGA's Annika Pro-Am, paired with the world's #1 golfer, Nelly Korda. Suddenly, the galleries exploded. Crowds followed Clark's group in numbers rarely seen during Pro-Am rounds. Fans wore Iowa jerseys and Indiana Fever gear while walking down the fairways. At one point, a joke started circulating among golf insiders. Caitlin Clark might have just become the most popular women's golfer on the planet, without even being a golfer. But none of that actually mattered. The Golf Channel, which normally treats Pro-Am rounds as background coverage, suddenly expanded its broadcasts to follow Clark specifically. Interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, live streams of her warm-up routine. A week later, she appeared again, this time at the PGA Tour's RSM Classic Pro-Am. And that's when things became truly surreal. Tom Brady was playing the same day on the same course. Yet much of the attention still drifted toward a 22-year-old basketball player who had only been golfing seriously for about 18 months. Then came the shot that stunned everyone watching. On a long par 5, Clark unleashed a drive that traveled nearly 270 yards down the fairway. The PGA Tour commissioner himself watched the ball roll and reportedly turned to those around him with disbelief. Moments later, she hit a beautiful iron shot that rolled onto the green. People weren't just watching anymore. They were staring. Fast forward to the next November. Pelican Golf Club again. Clark returned to the Annika Pro-Am, this time bringing teammates from the Indiana Fever to act as celebrity caddies. The atmosphere felt like a major tournament. Hundreds of fans arrived before sunrise. Many wore Hawkeye jerseys. Others carried homemade signs. Clark's gallery was easily 10 times larger than any other group on the course. The first tee felt like something out of a movie. Yet midway through the round, reality hit. Her drives began slicing. Her tempo sped up. She was swinging too hard, trying to crush every ball. Then something remarkable happened. Instead of pretending everything was fine, Caitlin Clark walked over to one of the most respected golf coaches in the world, Jamie Mulligan, and asked for advice right there in front of everyone. No ego. No pride. Just a simple request. Help me fix this. Moments later, she stepped back to the tee. Swing. The ball flew straight down the fairway, the cleanest drive of her entire day. The crowd erupted. Clark laughed, shaking her head at how simple the adjustment had been. But the moment that truly broke the internet came later. Standing on the 10th green, facing a massive putt nearly 30 feet away, she had earlier joked to reporters that the crowd was probably waiting for one dramatic moment. One shot that would make them explode. Then she lined up the putt. The gallery went quiet. The stroke was smooth. The ball rolled across the green, and suddenly the entire crowd leaned forward at the exact same time. But none of that actually mattered. The Golf Channel, which normally treats Pro-Am rounds as background coverage, suddenly expanded its broadcasts to follow Clark specifically. Interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, live streams of her warm-up routine. A week later she appeared again, this time at the PGA Tour's RSM Classic Pro-Am. And that's when things became truly surreal. Tom Brady was playing the same day on the same course. Yet much of the attention still drifted toward a 22-year-old basketball player who had only been golfing seriously for about 18 months. Then came the shot that stunned everyone watching. On a long par 5, Clark unleashed a drive that traveled nearly 270 yards down the fairway. The PGA Tour commissioner himself watched the ball roll and reportedly turned to those around him with disbelief. Moments later, she hit a beautiful iron shot that rolled onto the green. People weren't just watching anymore. They were staring. Fast forward to the next November. Pelican Golf Club again. Clark returned to the Onega Pro-Am, this time bringing teammates from the Indiana Fever to act as celebrity caddies. The atmosphere felt like a major tournament. Hundreds of fans arrived before sunrise. Many wore Hawkeye jerseys. Others carried homemade signs. Clark's gallery was easily 10 times larger than any other group on the course. The first tee felt like something out of a movie. Yet midway through the round, reality hit. Her drives began slicing. Her tempo sped up. She was swinging too hard, trying to crush every ball. Then something remarkable happened. Instead of pretending everything was fine, Caitlin Clark walked over to one of the most respected golf coaches in the world, Jamie Mulligan, and asked for advice right there in front of everyone. No ego. No pride. Just a simple request. Help me fix this. Moments later, she stepped back to the tee. Swing. The ball flew straight down the fairway, the cleanest drive of her entire day. The crowd erupted. Clark laughed, shaking her head at how simple the adjustment had been. But the moment that truly broke the internet came later. Standing on the 10th green, facing a massive putt nearly 30 feet away, she had earlier joked to reporters that the crowd was probably waiting for one dramatic moment. One shot that would make them explode. Then she lined up the putt. The gallery went quiet. The stroke was smooth. The ball rolled across the green, and suddenly the entire crowd leaned forward at the exact same time. Because the story of that day was never about winning a trophy. The real story happened afterward, when the world's top golfers began talking about what they had just witnessed. Nelly Korda, who had dominated the tournament in previous years and stood among the very best players in the world, was asked about Clark's performance. Instead of focusing on the golf itself, Korda talked about something more remarkable: Clark's presence. She said what impressed her most wasn't a single shot or swing. It was how relaxed Clark seemed while cameras followed her everywhere. How she laughed, chatted with fans, and stayed completely comfortable despite being the center of attention every second. Then Korda said something that captured the entire moment perfectly. It's amazing to see how many people she brings to another sport. That one sentence revealed something powerful. When the second-best golfer in the world tells you that you're bringing new audiences to her sport, you've already accomplished something bigger than any tournament victory. And that's exactly where the ripple effect began. Because what happened at Pelican Golf Club didn't stay there. The PGA Tour quickly posted Clark's swing to its official social media accounts, calling her a multi-sport athlete. The LPGA shared clip after clip: the long putt, the drives, even the hilarious Cunningham moment, and every single post exploded with views. Golf Channel analysts began breaking down Clark's swing mechanics on air like she was a rising amateur prospect. Sports media outlets started comparing her natural ability to other famous athlete golfers like Steph Curry, Tony Romo, and Patrick Mahomes. But the most striking reaction came from someone who sees elite golf every single week. PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan. Monahan said he had never seen someone strike the golf ball that well after only a year and a half of serious play. Never. He pointed to her competitiveness, the intensity behind every swing, and the unmistakable fire that shows up whenever she competes at anything. Zach Johnson, a major champion with more than a dozen PGA Tour victories, went even further. He said Clark wasn't just raising the ceiling in basketball. She was raising it for sports in general. He called her a role model, an icon. Then he said something that stayed with many people who heard it. She's a rare breed. But perhaps the most meaningful moment of the entire event had nothing to do with a drive, a putt, or a viral clip. A Golf Digest writer walking the course noticed a young girl in the gallery, a 15-year-old high school basketball star named Audrey Rollins. She had driven hours with her family just to watch Caitlin Clark play golf. She wore a red shirt with Clark's number 22 on it, and she held a black marker in her hand, hoping for an autograph. Clark saw her, and she stopped. She signed the shirt, posed for a photo, and talked with her like it was the most natural thing in the world. In fact, she did that for dozens of fans throughout the day. Kids, families, young athletes who looked at her not just as a basketball player, but as someone who showed them what was possible. That's the part the viral clips never fully capture. The drives are exciting. The putts are thrilling. But the real story is the generation of young athletes watching their heroes show up in completely different arenas and still command the same attention. That's the moment you realize something bigger is happening. Caitlin Clark isn't just crossing sports. She's connecting them. And the timing of it all couldn't have been more perfect. Not long after the golf appearance, Nike released a short commercial titled From Anywhere. The ad opened with Clark shooting baskets in a quiet driveway, a reminder of where her journey started. Throughout the commercial, different voices asked her the same question over and over again. Can you make it from here? The line wasn't just about basketball. It was about everything she represents. Clark had already signed one of the largest endorsement deals ever for a women's basketball player, an 8-year contract worth $28 million. Her signature logo appeared on merchandise that sold out almost immediately. Her first signature shoe was already on the horizon. Industry experts believed it could grow into a $150 million franchise. And yet, none of that fully explains what makes Caitlin Clark unique. Because when she walked onto that golf course, she wasn't promoting a brand. She was doing something far more powerful. She was bringing audiences from one world into another simply by being herself. Basketball fans suddenly started watching golf. Golf fans became curious about women's basketball. Young athletes across different sports began seeing new possibilities for what a modern superstar could look like. Clark's off-season appearances kept reinforcing that idea. She showed up courtside at Indiana Pacers games, supported college basketball at Butler, attended charity events, and collaborated with athletes from NASCAR, football, and soccer. Everywhere she went, the same thing happened. Crowds followed. Conversations started. New fans appeared. That's why so many legends across sports have begun saying the same thing. Caitlin Clark isn't just changing basketball. She's changing the definition of sports stardom itself. And the most remarkable part? She's still only in her mid-20s. Still years away from what should be the peak of her athletic prime. Which raises the biggest question of all. If Caitlin Clark can dominate basketball, electrify a golf course, and capture audiences across multiple sports at the same time, what happens next? Because wherever she goes, one thing is certain. The spotlight doesn't follow Caitlin Clark. It finds her. And when it does, the entire world stops and watches. What happened at Pelican Golf Club didn't fade away after the crowds went home. In fact, that moment became the spark for a much bigger conversation across the entire sports world. Because when Caitlin Clark casually stepped onto a golf course and instantly drew massive galleries, television attention, and viral clips, it forced people to confront a reality that many had been slowly realizing. Clark's influence had grown far beyond basketball.